You probably can't remember the last time you walked into Radio Shack, but it remembered you, because for decades, every single time you bought something there, a cable, a remote, even one 9-volt battery, the person behind the counter asked for your name, your address, your phone number, and you gave it to them. Tens of millions of Americans did. Radio Shack swore it would guard that information, swore, in writing, that it would never sell it. This is the story of how that promise died, and how 100-year-old empire tried to auction off its own customers on the way into the grave. Ask anyone why Radio Shack died and you'll hear the same answers. The smartphone, Amazon, a store that sold spare parts in a world that stopped fixing anything. All of that is true, but it is not the whole story, and it is not the part that should stay with you. Because the real story of Radio Shack isn't only how it died, it's what the company was willing to do to the people who trusted it, once it knew the end was coming. This is the file on Radio Shack. But to understand the betrayal, you have to understand what was built. It began in 1921, in Boston, with two brothers named Theodore and Milton Deutschman. Their obsession was radio, the strange new magic of pulling voices out of thin air. They named their shop after the little wooden cabin on a ship where the radio gear was kept, the place sailors went to reach the outside world. They called it Radio Shack. For 40 years it was a modest hobby store, and by the early 1960s it was nearly dead, bleeding money, down to a handful of failing shops. Then a Texas leather goods salesman named Charles Tandy saw something everyone else had missed. Not the radios, the people. An entire army of hobbyists, tinkerers, and dreamers who would happily wire their whole lives together if someone just sold them the parts. In 1963, he bought the dying company for around $300,000, and then it exploded. When the Citizens Band radio craze swept America in the 70s, Radio Shack was there on every corner to sell the nation its voice. It filled its stores with walls of tiny drawers, resistors, capacitors, transistors, wires, a temple for anyone who wanted to build something. It even handed out a card that got you a free battery every single month, just for walking in. To a generation of kids and engineers, Radio Shack wasn't a store. It was where the future was kept in stock. Then, in August of 1977, Radio Shack did something that should have made it immortal. It put one of the first personal computers the world had ever seen onto its store shelves. The TRS-80, $599.95. Ordinary people, not scientists, not corporations, could walk into a strip mall and carry home a computer. Radio Shack was standing, for one shining moment, at the exact center of the revolution that would remake the entire planet. By the end of the 90s, Radio Shack was everywhere. Around 7,000 stores across the United States, nearly 8,000 around the world. The company bragged, in its own annual report, that 94% of all Americans lived or worked within 5 minutes of a Radio Shack. Think about that. Almost the entire country, all was 5 minutes from the little store with the red sign. That kind of reach is a fortune. But it is also something else, and this is where the story turns. Because here is the thing about that little store. Why would a shop selling you a $3 battery need your home address? For years, the answer was a running national joke. The Radio Shack clerk who wanted your name and phone number just to sell you a pack of AA's. They built a mailing list out of a nation, and they told you not to worry. Their policy said it plainly. They would not sell or rent your personal information to anyone, at any time. Remember that sentence. Everything that comes next hangs on it. Then the ground shifted. The world stopped tinkering. Gadgets became sealed glass slabs nobody could open, let alone repair. The wall of little drawers, the whole soul of the place, stopped making sense to a generation that just wanted things to work. Radio Shack panicked, and it reached for the one product that was still flying off shelves: cell phones. It turned itself into a phone store. It felt like salvation. Mobile phones grew from a third of Radio Shack's sales to more than half. But it was a trap. The margins were thin, the company was now at the mercy of the wireless carriers, and worst of all, it had quietly killed the one thing that made it special. The tinkerers stopped coming. The stores grew quiet and strange, too small, too empty. staffed by people trying to sell you a phone plan under a sign that once promised you the future. What followed was a decade of flailing. Radio Shack bet big and lost, pouring money into sprawling electronics megastores called Incredible Universe, and a computer superstore chain called Computer City, only to shut them down or sell them off for scrap within a few years. Then came the desperate rebrand in 2009 that begged everyone to call it the Shack, a nickname that never once escaped the marketing department. Executives came and went through a revolving door, each promising a turnaround, each watching the losses grow. The company was running out of ideas, out of identity, and out of time. In 2014, Radio Shack did the most self-aware thing a dying company has ever done. It bought a Super Bowl ad and led a parade of 1980s icons storm into a store and haul away every last piece of it, while a voice joked that the 80s had called and wanted their store back. America loved it. Critics called it brilliant, and it changed absolutely nothing. It was a company standing on its own grave, telling a joke, because the alternative was to admit the truth. It was already over. On February 5, 2015, Radio Shack filed for bankruptcy. More than 4,000 stores, the ones that had been 5 minutes from every American, went dark. The liquidation signs went up in the windows, and it should have ended there, a sad but ordinary death. Another brand that couldn't keep up, except the people picking over the corpse found something. The single most valuable thing Radio Shack still owned wasn't in any of those stores. It was you. All those decades of asking for your name at the register had built something enormous. Tens of millions of customer profiles, as many as 117 million records, names, home addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, lists of exactly what you had bought and when. In bankruptcy, a company's assets get sold to pay its debts, and Radio Shack's creditors looked at that mountain of personal data and decided to put it up for auction. Read that back slowly. The exact information the company had sworn, in writing, it would never sell was now the first thing it tried to sell. The promise made at 10,000 cash registers to tens of millions of trusting customers was worth precisely nothing the moment there was money to be made from breaking it. This was the betrayal, not the smartphone, not Amazon. But this time, something stopped it. When the sale hit the court records, the alarm went off across the country. Somewhere between 36 and 38 state attorneys general, from Texas to Tennessee, and the Federal Trade Commission itself moved in to block it. Their argument was simple and furious. You cannot make a promise to 100 million people and then sell them off the second it's convenient. A bankruptcy, they said, does not erase your word. In the end, a judge allowed only a sliver of the data, a limited set of email addresses from recent customers who could opt out, to pass to the company that bought the surviving stores. The rest of that mountain, tens of millions of records, was ordered destroyed. It was, barely, a victory for the customers, and it bought Radio Shack itself a short reprieve. Around 1,700 stores survived, rebranded, propped up in a deal with a wireless carrier, a ghost of the empire, still breathing. The ghost did not last. In March of 2017, Radio Shack filed for bankruptcy a second time. The remaining stores, roughly 1,300 of them, were closed in waves, until what had once been 5 minutes from every American in the country came down to a few dozen shops scattered across the map. The most familiar electronics store in the history of the United States had, for all practical purposes, simply vanished. And then the story got strange. The Radio Shack name, that 100-year-old symbol of soldering irons and Sunday afternoon projects, was bought up, and in 2022 it was reborn as something almost no one saw coming, a cryptocurrency. The brand that sold your grandfather his first CB radio now had a digital token and a deliberately crude, meme-soaked internet campaign. The token launched, and then it collapsed, losing more than 99% of its value. Later, regulators would accuse the people behind that venture of fraud, allegations they deny. So what really killed Radio Shack? Yes, the world changed, and it failed to change with it. But strip away the excuses and you find something more human, and more damning. Radio Shack started as a place that taught America how to build things with its own hands. It ended as a company that decided its most loyal customers weren't people at all. They were inventory. an asset on a spreadsheet, to be sold to the highest bidder when nothing else was left. And here's why this file should follow you out of this video. The next time a cashier or an app asks for your number just for the receipt, and promises it's only for you, remember Radio Shack. Remember that a promise about your data is only ever as strong as the company's worst day. And every company, eventually, has its worst day. So let me ask you, did you ever shop at Radio Shack, dig through those little drawers, hand your name to the clerk without a second thought? And knowing where all of that data very nearly ended up, would you have handed it over at all? Tell me in the comments. Because Radio Shack was not the first company to treat your trust as an asset to be sold. And it will not be the last. This was file number 11. If you want to see which empire we open next, subscribe, because the brighter it shines, the darker the story underneath. Every empire leaves a file.